Hey guys, welcome back to another Sparkle Adventure. Today we're doing something very different and I'm actually going to try my hand at watercoloring. This is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, just kind of dabble with it and see what happens. I was recently at Orlando at the Stamp and Scrapbook Expo next to Little Craft Place, a fellow shop owner booth, and they had these watercolors and I saw Eunice, she's one of the owners of the shop. She had used these watercolors in her Hobonichi for memory keeping, and they were just gorgeous. So I was like, you know what? I'm tempted enough. I'm right here. They're right here. I'm going to get them. So these are the watercolors from Prima Marketing. This is the Pastel Dreams collection from their Confection line. I'm not sure. They've got a bunch of different descriptions on this box. But anyway, I love the brightness of the colors and the pastels. Now I will do a more in-depth review once we get into the video a little bit more. But for now, I'll just kind of show you what I'm looking at here. So this is the pan where you hold the watercolors. I've never used watercolors like this before. I've really only used Crayola. So this is totally different to have these blocks. Also known as pans. See, I'm getting into the lingo. I don't know it too well. But anyway, this is the first time I'm opening it, so we have a lot of unwrapping to do. I like that they're all individually wrapped. It kind of adds a nice little fanciness to it because you definitely don't get this with Crayola. So I'm going to go ahead and cut to the end because this took a long time of just unwrapping every single one. Okay, so now that they're all unwrapped, we can really get a better idea of what the colors look like. First things first, I wanted to do a swatch using the card that comes with the watercolors. I agonized over which brushes to buy. I was at Michael's walking up and down the aisles. I mean, because I'm a beginner, I didn't want to invest a lot of money in really fancy brushes, but I also didn't want to get crap ones either. So I ended up going with this set. It's kind of it looked like a really nice beginner set of brushes that are meant for watercoloring in particular. I have no idea what makes these brushes any different from brushes for other types of media, but anyway, they said watercolor and I like the different sizes, so I went with these. Okay, so getting into the colors here, I have seen artists do this thing where they grab color and put it on the tin and kind of add water to it, so I was like, well, let's try that. The first color, the yellow, is Bumblebee, number 43. I do like how bright and vibrant it is. It doesn't need a whole lot of actual paint from the pan. See, there we go, using the lingo. I, as you'll see in this video, had a hard time balancing between how much water to add, when to not add water. Okay, next one, Icy Sky. This is a really faint blue color, not quite as faint as another in the set, which you'll see in just a moment. Again, I like the lightness of the color, which is a theme throughout this Pastel Dreams collection. Next up is the color Paradise. It's this really kind of greenish, bluish color. This is where I start to get, not complain, but this is where my confusion comes in with this collection. As you can see, this color is a lot richer than the Icy Sky next to it. And yes, it's a darker color, but just the richness and the saturation of the color itself is a lot higher. And I didn't use more or less water with either one. So some of these colors don't really all go together. Okay, next color is Pool Party. This is appropriate because it is summer, and that does look like the color of a pool party. Well, the color of the water of a pool party. You get it. With this color, when I swatched it, I was really trying to go for a circle, because I feel like that's what you're supposed to do, right? Aren't you supposed to put circles instead of just blobs? So I tried a circle. This is what we came up with. All right, so next color, and actually now that I'm looking at the descriptions of the colors on the other panel that you're not seeing right now, I think that this is actually Icy Sky and the other color, the first blue, is Sea Dream. So this color I actually really have an issue with. I don't know when I'll use it. It is the faintest blue. It's if you added just a sweet little kiss of blue to the lightest shade of gray you could think of. It took a lot of color to even get this to really show up on the page, and I don't know when I'll even use a shade this light. For those of you who use watercolors, I guess this would be a good question for you, but couldn't I just add white or water to a light blue to get that shade? I mean, I guess I don't understand the point of having a color that light. Okay, so now on to one of my favorite colors in the collection. This is Lilac Rain. I love purple. It's the epitome of pastel to me is a light purple, which this is. This is another one that's super saturated, kind of like Bumblebee was at the beginning. And I'm adding more water here again because it's almost too saturated. So I'm trying to lighten it up a bit. Okay, Okay, so now we're on to citrus. This is definitely the brightest and most saturated color in the pack. Again, I kind of don't see where this and Icy Sky go together in the same palette, but I don't know, maybe they go together better than I think. This is where I also tried a different technique where I had too much watercolor on my brush and I was trying to get it off and I didn't have like a paper towel or anything. So I tried that stippling technique where I just put dots on the pan until it kind of like there was less water on the brush. Onto the pinks. This first color is called Lemonade. I don't know why it's called Lemonade because it's pink, but it's not called Pink Lemonade. Okay. I was watching reviews and other people work with this collection before I started working with it myself, and someone said that this would be a really good skin tone color. Maybe? I don't know much about that either, but maybe if you were trying to like maybe add blush to the cheeks or shading, I don't know. But it's just kind of a faint pink. It's pretty. We have Rose. This is a bit darker of a pink. It has maybe a bit of a purplish tint to it. Yeah, super cute pink color. The darkest of the three pinks. Now the name of this one is probably the most confusing. This one's called Crimson, yet it's pink. And in my mind, crimson means like dark red, like a super red rose, but this is like a reddish pink. So the name is super confusing, but the color is really pretty. I was gonna say like maybe my circles are getting better, but I don't know if they actually are. Onto the browns. This one is called Chocolate. It is the lighter of the two. They're actually very different once you see them on paper. These were the two colors that I was kind of like, how do these go? I was unsure how Prima marketing intended for this palette to be used. You'll see in the end of the video, I did a couple doodles on a page and I used these colors, I think, well in the doodles. It's kind of like how I envisioned the colors would be used with like pastries or desserts, because brown it's chocolate, but then you could have like pink or purple for icing, but maybe skin tones. This goes back to the lemonade color. Maybe you could kind of mix this, lighten it up, put things together and come up with some really great skin tones. And then we have brown. Wow, real original Prima marketing. This is just called brown. Really see the difference between the two brown shades. The one on the left, Chocolate, has a bit more of like a orange, lighter color to it, look to it. I don't know. See, I don't know the words and the terms yet, but the brown is more rich and full and darker. Time to whip out the Stalogy. I am so excited to finally get in this planner. I ordered this from Amazon. I was intending to use it as kind of like a memory keeper. It has the Tomoe River paper, yet the difference between this and a Hobonichi is that it is undated, which I love. I love the freedom of just being able to open it and create whenever I want without feeling the pressure of having to keep up with dates. And yes, I know there are date covers, but I just wanted some plain Tomoe River paper notebook and see what happens. When I bought the watercolors, it was suggested to me to buy a micron pen because it has archival ink, meaning that when you put the micron pen down first, if you write or draw, whatever, when you add the watercolor, the archival ink does not smear or run. So I picked this up at Michael's. I was really kind of conflicted whether or not I should get like a set of different sizes. In the end, I just got this one. It's the 05. I think I might actually go back and get a smaller pen because this one was a bit thicker than I intended. Oh, and you can see there next to watercolor, it did smear a little bit. So you have to let it dry for just a moment and then it's good to go. Okay, time to actually put the watercolor on the Tomoe River paper. I've never done this before. I've never had a notebook with this kind of paper, but I've heard that it's really great to watercolor with, as I've seen before in other people's planners. So I'm just going to start with a simple swatch of the colors. I'm going to play around with like how much water to use, how much color to use, how to swatch. I mean, this I'm really just playing around with the colors and the brush and the paper. I'm probably just going to put music over this because there's not too much I can talk about other than the fact that I'm just kind of experimenting here. Enjoy! So I wanted to hop back in here and talk about the color and my experience with using the colors. I know that my biggest issue was the color pooling together, the water pooling together and not really spreading. I know that a huge proponent of this issue is that I'm using Tomoe River paper and not watercolor paper. I think watercolor paper it's a thicker paper and the water doesn't tend to pool like it does with Tomoe River paper because the paper is like buckling and therefore it's going to lead to the color pooling. But this is where I had an issue because I would want to go grab more color to add saturation to a swatch and I would just get more water and then it would just lead to the whole thing being way too watery. So in the brown color on the far left, you saw me adding more and more brown. But then I had to go and grab a paper towel and dab some of that water up because it was just too wet. This issue with the color pooling together, the water pooling on the Tomoe River paper, is making me consider tubes of watercolor as opposed to the pans. I'm thinking it might be easier to control the ratio of water to color with the tube form instead of the dried pan form, but that's something I'll play with in the future. Okay, so now it's time to put these watercolors to use. I said earlier in the video that I could imagine these colors being used for desserts or sweets, pastries, because of the selection and options of colors here. Doodling is another area in which I'm very inexperienced, but I want to just kind of jump into it, get my hands dirty, and see what I can create. So I'm definitely not like a super great artist, but I'm just trying my hand at it. I drew the cupcake, I'm going to trace over it with the Micron. Again, I'm using the 05 here, the only one that I have. But yeah, I'm going to trace over it with the Micron so that way when I use the watercolors, I can still see the shape of the cupcake, but it's not as faint or as light as the pencil. Doodle, I thought that the colors would make a really awesome ice cream cone, so I tried doing that. When I was editing this video, I was unsure of whether or not I should do a lot of jump cuts to keep it shorter, but then it would cut out the process of actually doing the coloring, doing the doodling. And as you can see here, I decided to keep it in. I thought that the value of this video was seeing the process of all of it come together, including the doodling. So that's why the video is a little bit longer. Doodle, you can see I did a donut there. I didn't realize that my camera had cut out. I guess the battery died, but I just followed another tutorial, drew the donut. I will say, as I'm tracing the donut, some changes I would make would be to maybe not do an ice cream cone because it needed more height and you can't really see the whole thing. And with the donut, I don't know, like all three doodles don't really line up well, so I probably would have done them differently. Maybe drawn all three before tracing them. So that's just a note for myself for the future. Time to watercolor. So this is where I really started to work with blending the colors and mixing it up a little bit. I started with, was that lemonade? No, rose. I started with rose. This is going to be for the icing of the cupcake. Then I added lilac rain because I wanted to see how those colors mixed together. You can see here, as I'm starting to color the icing, I'm already getting an issue with the color not spreading the way that I want. Again, I think this is where maybe another form of paint, a thicker, less watery paint would do better on Tomoe River paper because I could really spread the color the way I want to. And, you know, water just kind of goes wherever it wants. So it was hard to control with these doodles. Techniques that I used, I don't know if this is right or proper to do, but I thought that if I kind of mopped up some of the color with a paper towel, I could then go in with a more saturated, maybe less watery version of the color. I don't know the right terms, but see, I just go right from the pan to the paper instead of picking up the blended color that had more water. You can see that it's still collecting. It's not spreading the way that I want to. So maybe time, experience, or other materials will help with that in the future. All right, this is where I make my first mistake. I am impatient. I should have waited, but watch. That red color, because the purple had not dried like at all, when I added the red and the two colors, the two waters met, that red from the cherry just bled right down. So I did my best to blend it. I think I also, you can see me mop up the redness with the paper towel. And then I went through and added more purple. But I learned definitely with these doodles to wait. So once I wanted to do two colors that met, I would have to wait for the first one to dry before I added a second one. All right, so for the ice cream cone, I wanted to use this green color. I didn't mix it with any others. I thought, I don't know, ice cream, green, mint chocolate chip, kinda. Anyway, so I just added the green right to it. But instead of adding the next ice cream color, I decided to go to the donut. When I originally drew the donut, I envisioned pink icing with sprinkles, but I'd already used pink for the cupcake, and I wanted to really get versatility of these colors and see what went together, so I went with blue icing on the donut. For the ice cream cone itself, I used chocolate, and then I think I lightened it up with a little bit of bumblebee to kind of give it the brightness of an ice cream cone. I mean, really, they're just like a light tan color, so I did my best to match that. For the chocolate cupcake, I think I just grabbed brown, just straight brown, and just put it down. I mean, I added a little bit of water to it on the top of the pan, as you saw there, but then I just added straight brown to the cupcake. Next up, I'm going to be adding the other color or ice cream scoop. Now that I'm watching this back, I want to yell at myself and tell myself, just wait, be patient, because the colors, you can probably tell, are not dry, so it's just going to bleed again. But you learn as you go through it, and that's definitely what I've learned through creating this watercolor page and then editing and watching it back. Oh, come on, just see, you can see the pink. It's bleeding right down there onto the ice cream cone. I think I worked with it and blended it back up, so you can't even tell that the pink had blended down onto the ice cream cone in the end, which, not too bad. As I put on the finishing touches of the doodles and the watercolors, I wanted to come in and say thank you so much for hanging out with me as I dove into the Pastel Dreams from Prima marketing and the watercolors and doodling. I learned a lot and I can't wait to keep doing more. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Please subscribe to see more doodles, watercolors, planner spreads, paper crafting, all those things. And I'll see you next time. Bye.